Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Jacques the Winter Market from WizKids Games. In hindsight, I'm pretty sure it's just WizKids, not WizKids Games, but I could be wrong. So many companies actually have the games not listed, but I think it's just WizKids. Jacques is a 1 to 5 player game of set collection. In this game, players are trying to gather cards. It's the entire point. Gather cards, score them as efficiently as possible while you wander around this board over here. You're going to have these tokens over here, and the tokens are going to be moving around. You're going to grab a pawn. You're going to grab the pawn that's furthest behind. So, for example, this pawn over here gets to choose any one card in the row. Pick any card that you think is the best card for you. In my case, because there's a 6 over here and a 6 over here and a 5 here, I'm going to go ahead and grab the Sparkler. I think it makes sense to me. We're going to explain more why you're grabbing the cards, but the first thing to note is cards are worth points, and they also have certain other factors going on, but we'll explain some of that as we grab a few cards, then we'll go through how this operates. That means it's going to be Blue's player take 2 cards in a row, and they're going to take advantage of that. They know that if they take the 4, they might be able to apply pressure. You know what they're going to do? They're going to go ahead and grab this 3. You know what? They're going to grab the... They're going to skip the 3, actually. They're going to go ahead and grab the 4 Sparkler, and then they're going to go ahead and grab the Antique over here. Ooh, do I want... You know what we're going to do? We're going to keep it simple. I'm kind of tempted to do things a little more complicated, but we're not going to. That means Black has 2 turns in a row, because, again, you're always choosing the pawn in last place, and every player has 2 pawns on the board. So Black's going to go ahead and grab this Antique. Generally, when there's a last card, it's usually worth grabbing if you're anyways going to go again. There are times where it's not, but today is not one of those times. From there, they have a few options, but they're actually going to go ahead and grab the Sparkler over here. And the Sparkler has a specific rule where the Sparkler can only be taken if it's between 0, 1, and 2 of the last Sparkler you have. Since the last one was a 7, they can go ahead and take that and put it on top because it's within 0, 1, and 2. And because there's a 6 up next, and a 5 up next, and a 5 up next, it means they're in good position to be able to grab any of the Sparklers currently on the table. What I'm not doing a great job is, as the people move around, you're going to go ahead and add new cards to the board. You're continuously moving the person along the board, adding more cards, and adding more, things to be mindful of as you wander around. We're going to go ahead down over here, and now it's Black's turn again, but this is where Black has an interesting option in front of them. Because what they're going to do is they're going to pop over to this skating card, which gives them the skating card over here, but also it has a rule that skating cards say that you move your other person on the pawn, you move your other person on the board right away. So this other pawn over here is going to go ahead and move around the board, and to that end, I'm a little torn, but I think I will go ahead and grab these Antiques over here. We'll explain why I'm taking this only 2-point card, but we're going to go ahead and grab that. Blue's going to go ahead, and they'll take this, I think they could just take this. Fine, they'll go ahead and take this. May as well. It's a few points over here. We'll toss it over there. I think I actually messed up which side is which over here. It should be like this. And then they're going to go ahead, and this should be over here. And they're going to go ahead overhead and move this person. And they could take the Patchwork. I think they'll go ahead and grab the Patchwork. They'll start trying to lock in some Patchwork over here. Blue goes again. They'll go ahead and lock in Patchwork. And Patchwork has to be go ahead and put together so you can score hopefully as many points as possible as you line this all up. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck this over here like so and see how that plays out as I continue to build out this little array of Patchwork over here. You're going to continuously move around the board trying to take cards as much as possible. Now there's 2 decks over here. There's a day deck and the night deck over here, and some of the cards over here can have mid-game scoring, which is where we haven't even talked about this yet, but you're currently only seeing a small sampling of cards in the game. In a typical game of Jacques, you're going to choose 6 sets to play with. The game has some recommended sets, but you're choosing 6 sets to play with. And then you have an absolute ton of other sets to go through over here. All of these different sets, they'll give you different cards to go through, each of them giving you small different ways of the ways they score, the way they do things, the abilities they give you in-game. There's a lot of cards to go through. But in the game, you're going to pick those 6 sets, and you could pick more or less depending on player count, so you could adjust it. It's not a hard 6, but you'll pick those 6 sets. You're going to go ahead and shuffle them all up, divide them into day and night, put them on the board, and then start the process of running around the board, picking cards, and trying to score as efficiently as possible based on the set collection that you are gathering. And to that end, the game is going to have direct points. So you have things like the Sparklers over here, which simply have the points shown to them. Sparklers are going to be 6 points. They just have a placement restriction. You can't always take a Sparkler depending on how the board plays out. You have these teapots over here, which are worth points based on the corner, but every set of 3 teapots is worth an additional 10 points. So being mindful of the number of teapots over there is another factor in play. You have the mystery boxes, which you take cards from the top of the deck and just get an extra draw. You have Patchwork, which Patchwork is going to get progressively better and better as you build up this board, but effectively on these Patchwork cards, and again, even right now, I'm kind of torn between how I structure this. I'm not gonna spend too much time, but Patchwork is going to give you points for every one of these complete squares you build, which means the more you can gather of these, the more you'll be building out more and more sets of them, so you really want to go heavy on patchwork or not at all. And those are some of the sets we have over here. There's actually in skating you've already seen. Skating gives you a way to send your person around the board, which can be really advantageous. Sometimes with skating, you might have a person far up in advance, you grab a skating card, and the person who's already in the lead can go again, taking 2 cards in a row, and so there's some little fun things like that you have, and I have access to during the game. When you get to the mid-game scoring, when you get to the halfway point of the game, if there are any cards in play that have a mid-game scoring, some do, some don't, none of the sets I have right now have them, then you'll go ahead and engage with the mid-game scoring, and otherwise you go ahead and continue to deal cards to the night deck until eventually cards run out, you add up each person's scores and see who won the game based on how well they did. And that is basically Jacques Mach, the Winter Market. You are running around the board, you have 2 pawns, you're going to be moving your pawns trying to gather cards as efficiently as possible, and you're doing so from a highly variable set of just dozens and dozens of cards. I don't know if it's dozens and dozens. There's a lot of sets of different cards to go through as you build out a highly variable experience every single time. Which brings us to a review, starting off with ease of play. The rules are incredibly, I'm going to show you the rulebook here because it's that short. We have the components over here, we have the how to play, we have setup, which is 1 page, we have gameplay, which is over there, we have some more gameplay, and then endgame scoring samples of here. So it's really just 2 pages of rules, and then some additional things for some, like, solo rules, 2-player scoring clarification, stuff like that, some set combinations recommended. This is a very easy game to set up and get into. It's just a very easy game to teach, to understand, to play. Plays in around 45 minutes or so. Could run slower or longer depending on the players, but one of the things that's interesting is the amount of cards you add is basically, you add 6 decks as the go-to recommendation. If you have more players, because it's a 1 to 5 player game, if you have more players, you could add more sets so that more players are getting more cards. If you have fewer players, you can dial it down to maybe 5 sets, so you don't have as many cards in the game. You have the ability to control the length of the game based on the amount of cards that are present in the game, not as much based on the number of players, because number of players, the game ends when they run out of cards, so it's the cards that are going to determine the length of the game over the players, but generally around that 45-minute mark. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, the biggest thing I like, and if you watch my videos, this should be no surprise, the biggest thing I like in this game is the high degree of variability that the experience gives you. Jacques Mach gives you a fairly light game. For the most part, the cards, I would say there are some cards that are more interesting than others. For the most part, the cards that you're gathering are fairly light. They have points in them, they have some small aspect of how they mess with the gameplay, but it's not anything crazy, which means the game is a lighter experience. That, to me, the main incentive for me, based on what I'm looking for out of it, is the fact that I can dive into it, I can dive into it 4 or 5 times without even seeing a single card repeated once, and then from there, the way the cards combine, there's not a ton of degree of combinations and ways that make it interesting or clever, but there still are different choices to make. There's higher scoring cards, there's cards that give you other abilities, there's cards that give you blind draw from the deck, and the way these things all combine will give you different levers as far as how you want to push things forward in the game. So this game just gives you a high degree of card variety, making the experience consistently like, ooh, what new fun package of various things in the Winter Market are we going to have access to today? I like the 2-pawn system. There are many games that have done the little puzzle of whoever's in last goes first, giving you a puzzle of, do you take the card that you want, but if you go too far ahead, then the other player might get a bunch of cards instead. And so it has that puzzle, but it has that puzzle with multiple pawns, which adds a nice little twist to it, because you can afford to send one person a little bit ahead, taking that extra risk, while still being in play with your other pawn, making so it's not as much of a direct wash if you jump ahead. So I like that little 2-pawn aspect. It allows for some clever opportunities. It allows for some cards. The skating card is one of my favorite cards because it adds a lot of interplay as far as how you can send someone ahead and then send someone ahead again, which can be very, very fun, especially if there are good cards ahead of the other players. And so you combine the interesting combination of cards, the card variety, the 2 pawns, the fact that the game is fast moving, incredibly charming, easy to teach, and Jacques Mach is just a strong gateway game in my opinion. As far as things I don't like in the game, at the end of the day, card variety or not, the game is on the lighter side. The game is set collection with a whoever's in the last in turn order goes ahead and goes first, and it's a very simple, very direct engine. I think to me this game is, the main thing this game is bringing to the table as far as new things in space and whatnot, is just a high degree of charm to the experience. The art, the presentation, the variable card packs, is a high degree of charm to Jacques Mach the Winter Market. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. I'm saying Jacques Mach instead of Jacques Mach. Jacques Mach. It might be Jacques Mach. But Jacques Mach, the Winter Market over here, there's a high degree of charm to the experience, but the game is definitely more on the lighter side than the typical game experience I'm looking for. The variety does add more to how much longevity the game has for me, but for me this is a game that's more about seeing the various cards in play and then possibly moving on from, just because it is a lighter game than what I'm personally looking for. I'll say there's lots of randomness at play in different types of cards and benefits. Not always, depends on the cards, sometimes there's lots of agency, but even right now you have the mystery box. The mystery box is just like draw a card from the top of the deck, and I don't even know if we have them in play. We should have them in play somewhere. But there's going to be some cards in this deck that are just like, there's a 15-point card in this deck. You use Mystery Box to grab a 15-point card versus if you get, you know, a 2-point Antique over here. It's a high degree of just change to just what you can draw for some of those cards. And there are other cards like that that have that higher degree of randomness to it. Nothing crazy, but something that's present in the game. As far as I can see others not liking, I kind of touched upon this a little bit, but it's not really balanced around player count so much as it is around the card decks themselves. So you could add or change cards, but if you're playing a basic standard six-pack game, playing it at 5 players is just going to be significantly less fun because you're going to score less points. You don't get those high, you know, 300-point scores or 200-point scores because you just don't have enough to do that with. Versus playing a 6-card deck at 2 players, you get a lot of cards and you can rack up those points very quickly as you go through it. So the game is not necessarily a huge problem because you can adjust some of the cards yourself, but the game is more about like, hey, here's the way the cards are, and then regardless of player count, you're just going to go ahead and divide all those cards equally amongst yourselves. As far as final thoughts on Jokkmokk the Winter Market, I think this game is very high in charm. It's very high on ease of play. It's very high on accessibility and the ability to just teach players, get people up and running, and it gives you that variability, which means that it is going to remain engaging for longer. No matter, regardless of whether you're looking at it as a lighter player, a heavier player, whoever you are, the game is going to last longer in terms of the variability of the experience because there are more cards in play. It means that you can go ahead and find a different combination of things that work for you that are fun in their own way. And so for me, this is a solid gateway game. It's easy to teach, easy to play, has lots of charm, lots of variability, simple rules, yet gives you strategy and agency along the way. For me, the biggest critique is it is still on the lighter side despite all those things. So for me personally, it's a 3.5 out of 5. I like Jokkmokk the Winter Market if you are looking for a good gateway game and honestly a great gift game. The very nature of this game feels very holiday spirit, very like a good gift game to like give to your friends, to your family, to get them into gaming. Something that is a lighter on the rule set while still being engaging enough on the strategy side to still be a fun time for all those playing. So a 3.5 out of 5, great game, a little on the lighter side for me personally, but overall an experience I'd recommend. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, if you're looking for a much heavier, meaner game that has that, you know, going in last place element, kind of thing, you can have Glenmore. Glenmore 2 specifically, I think, is the newest one out, but Glenmore 2 is going to give you a fun puzzle of trying to gather various tiles and place them in Tableau. Has some of the core aspects of that main selection process from Jokkmokk, but in a much heavier experience. And if you're looking for set collection, one of my favorite set collection games that I recommend to both lighter gamers and heavier gamers alike, I think Coloretto is an excellent experience that is mean, it is punchy, it is bitey, plays in like 20 minutes, and just gives you an excellent little card drafting experience of set collection as you try to figure out the most efficient ways to score points yourself and to possibly leave your opponents holding the bag. In any case, then until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.